Okay guys, let's get started working on the hero's journey today. If you do not already have this organizer in your codex, please raise your hand, pause the video, go get one, and get it glued in. I will wait right here. And now everybody has one. All right, we're going to be working on the hero's journey. If you haven't already put a title on your page, go ahead and do so. You can write yours kind of right up here at the top. Just like this, or you can get down here in the middle and you can write it down here because this is actually where we are going to be starting to begin with. If at any point I'm ever going too fast, that's the beauty of having your own video. You can play, pause, stop, rewind, zoom in, anything you need in order to make this work for you. But the goal is to get your notes down on paper. We're going to start right here in the middle of our circle, and we're going to number around in these small, tiny little circles. We're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And we're going to start at the very beginning with number 1. This section that will take us numbers 1 through 3 is called part 1. It's the first quarter of our circle. It is part 1, and it is called the call to adventure. And we'll talk about what that means in just a moment. But we are going to start right here with section 1. And this section 1 is going to be called The Ordinary World. And as we take our notes for The Ordinary World, you are going to want to write kind of small. I'm going to start in this first section right here, and I'm just going to label it The Ordinary World. And just like this. And when we talk about the ordinary world of a character, I'm going to be using the word protagonist. But the first thing we have to do is we have to have a place for our protagonist to be, which means we must have a setting. The setting, as we've talked about over the last couple of days, is the place and the time where the story starts. Now, stories can change, as we've seen, but this is where we begin. And we also must meet our protagonist. The protagonist is introduced in their normal life, and their life here can usually be pretty boring, because normal life is pretty boring. Or, I'm an English teacher, I can spell. Or we find out it is somehow horrible. Brings to mind for me, for the pretty boring notion here. Sorry, my tablet went weird. For the pretty boring notion, if we just watched Simba be a cub every single day of his life, that would be pretty boring. If he always listened to his dad, if he never went to the elephant graveyard, that would be a pretty boring life. Or I think of Harry Potter or Cinderella. We find out that their normal lives are pretty horrible. Cinderella is treated badly by her stepsisters and her stepmother. Harry Potter is treated badly by his aunt and uncle, and it's just all around not a good life to have. And we are almost immediately sympathetic towards them. We feel for them. But then something happens that is unexpected. And so we will move on into part 2, which is the call to adventure. In part 2, the call to adventure, and I'm going to be over here in the second section now. Again, write small because we're taking notes here. In the call to adventure, something happens that pulls the protagonist out of their normal life. The protagonist, or the hero, if you want to write it that way, is given a task or a problem. And they've got to either complete the task or they have to solve the problem before their life can get back to normal. And this is going to keep happening, which is unfortunate. On top of that, this task, this problem that they have to solve, usually it makes the hero have to leave their normal life behind. It calls them on a journey. That's why it's called the call to adventure, because usually they have to go on a journey. Now, this journey might have to take place inside their mind or in a different world, like Dorothy going to Oz in The Wizard of Oz, or even Harry Potter going away to Hogwarts. He has to leave somehow. Even Simba in The Lion King has to leave and go to the jungle, right? His uncle Scar tells him, "Leave, Simba, run away and never return." And then that takes us to the third part of our story. And this part is usually very important if it happens, but sometimes stories skip it. This is the refusal of the call. There may come a point in the story where the protagonist, our main character, doesn't want to go on the adventure. Harry Potter tells Hagrid, "I think you might have gotten it wrong. There's no way that I, little old Harry that gets beat up on all the time, there is no way that I can be a wizard." So there is a point here where the hero does not accept their task. During this time, the hero might think about the reasons to stay at home. They think about the reasons they shouldn't go on the journey. They may even try to run away. Sometimes, however, and this is important, occasionally, some authors will choose to skip this step. Sometimes it just doesn't work for the story. Part 4, as we come down over here, this gets us into the next quadrant that we have. And I am actually going to turn my tablet kind of upside down, even though you can't see it. This section is going to be called the Supreme Ordeal. So this is going to be part 2, the Supreme Ordeal. And those are a couple of really big words that simply mean something that is really, 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 really hard. So this involves an introduction to the mentor or the person that's going to teach them how to do things. This involves going into that new, strange, weird world that your character is going to go into. And it's also going to involve the challenges that our character is about to face. So let's get started with section number 4, which is called Meet the Mentor. This is the section in Harry Potter when Harry meets Hagrid. Why my pen got really, really huge, I don't know. We are about to find out why. Uno momento. Because my pen just got really fat for no reason. Yay, fixed. Okay. So we go here to meet the mentor. This could be a new character or an existing character, but it is another character who knows a lot about whatever this new world is. They are an expert in the new world. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they are like genius level, as I get into the wrong notebook because I broke it. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are a genius. What that means is that they know a lot about whatever this new world is. So Dorothy might meet Galinda the Good Witch, who teaches her all about Oz. Harry meets Hagrid, who takes him to Diagon Alley to go shopping for his wand and teaches him all about how the wizarding world works. What's another good one? Simba meets Timon and Pumbaa, who teach him all about Hakuna Matata and how to live in the jungle, right? So this character is an expert, and they teach them how to survive in this new world or this new adventure that they have entered. This character is also part of... Why do I keep switching pages, guys? Just saying. That's the one thing about this tablet. It's very, very touchy. This character, if we did have a refusal of the call in part 3, this character is the one who convinces our hero to actually take up the call. The one that comes to mind for that is in Star Wars, the very, very first one with Luke Skywalker. Luke originally says, "No, man, I can't go with you to learn the ways of the Force, Obi-Wan. I have to go back home. I have to listen to my uncle. I can't do all of these big and mighty things out in the galaxy." And then he goes back home and finds that his whole family has been killed by stormtroopers, which is weird because they can't shoot straight. And then he turns around and Obi-Wan is like, "Hey, now there's no reason not to come with me. You might as well," right? And that is what brings us into part 5, which is actually crossing the threshold from the old world to the new world. Now, this can be something literal, like crossing the threshold where Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz literally steps out the doorway of her old house and her old boring black and white kind of life that she was leading into a life that is lived in full color inside of Oz. Or it could be something a little bit more subtle, where Simba goes into the jungle. And yes, the jungle is still part of the same world, technically, as the Pride Lands, but it is very different to Simba himself. Harry Potter also has a crossing the threshold moment when Hagrid takes him literally through the brick wall into Diagon Alley. This crossing the threshold moment is the moment where the character, our main character, the hero, crosses the line into the new world. They take the first step to leave the normal behind, whatever that normal was. And again, if you need to shorten these, put them in your own words, those kinds of things, that is absolutely fine. But this new world they're going into is what is going to take them to complete the task. This is not always a physical change, although some of the examples I have given are a physical change. Sometimes it can just be a mental change. It can be a mindset change. So it can be a change in attitude. It could be a change in like an event that the character has never experienced before. It could be a good event or a bad event. Any of those things could happen that takes them into a place where they have never experienced the way the world works in that location. Part 6 is pretty fun. This is a long part in most books. It's kind of like we were talking about when we were doing the plot diagram. This was a section where several things can happen all at once. Tests, allies, and enemies. This is part 6. Tests, allies, enemies. This is the part where we are fully in the new world, but we begin to actually learn about how this world works. We might make new friends, like Harry meeting Ron and Hermione and the other students at Hogwarts, We might discover enemies. Learn how this new world works. Wow, guys, I shouldn't try to teach after 9 o'clock p.m. That's what I mean. We learn how the new world works. And during this time, we have puzzles to solve, people to save, and fights to win or lose. And I'm just going to put positive or negative there, because sometimes you win fights and sometimes you lose fights. But what happens during all of this, however, the hero is going to become stronger, wiser, and better, so that they can complete the task that has been put before them. And that takes us, crucially, into our third quarter on our circle. And I'm actually turning my paper all the way upside down in order to write on this one. This is part 3, transformation. And you might say, Miss Welch, it seems like they've changed a lot already. And you'd be right. They definitely have changed. But they haven't quite gotten there yet. They've learned all the pieces and parts that they need in order to defeat whatever it is, or to get the thing that they are seeking. But they haven't yet made the choice to take that final transformation. So, let's take a look at part 7. This is the approach. This is the section where Harry, Ron, and Hermione figure out that they need to go actually down into below where Fluffy is guarding in order to save the Sorcerer's Stone. This is where they decide they need to go into the Chamber of Secrets, so that they need to go after Sirius Black. I mean, you can follow the hero's journey through every single book in the Harry Potter series. This is the point in The Lion King where Simba actually sees his father in the clouds. And remember, Mufasa says, "Remember who you are." And Simba takes that really epic run back out across the savannah to get back to the Pride Lands to save the Pride. And so this is the section where, let me get my title on here. This is the section where the hero approaches the final battle. I mean, as it kind of says in the title. The hero approaches their final battle. Now they are armed with everything that they have learned, but they still struggle with how big the task is. Even with everything they've learned, even with all of the friends they've made, even with their mentor teaching them everything they know, it is still a gigantic task. And so in this section, they prepare for the final struggle. This might be a section where they gear up. This might be a section where they go to the library and do some research. This in sports and kind of survival stories, this is usually your gigantic like fight and training montage where they're working really hard and they're practicing really big and they're doing free throw after free throw after free throw, or they're running and they're running and they're running and they're trying to get ready for this final game that they're getting into. And then finally, this is where we reach the ordeal in section 8. The ordeal is something that in other plot diagrams, like if we're doing the plot pyramid and those kinds of things, the ordeal is what we would call the climax of the story. In some renditions of the hero's journey, this is actually a literal death and rebirth, especially in ancient mythology and that kind of thing. This is where the character might like literally go to the underworld. And in fantasy stories, you usually do see the characters truly go underground in order to complete their final task or have their final battle. I mean, you even see it in Mario. You have to go into the underground to fight Bowser, right? He's not out on the pretty green grass. He's down underneath in the dungeon. But this is the section where the hero or the protagonist, they approach their battle and they complete their final task. The hero fights the battle, or they complete the task. This could be going up against the all-state team and they've never been beaten. This can also be where they might lose something. In a tragedy, this would be where the hero dies. And that does happen in tragedies and sometimes in horror stories. Sometimes they can lose their life. Sometimes they can lose their weapon. Sometimes they can lose their mentor or their friend. Sometimes they will lose things, but they will always win by the skin of their teeth. I think I talked about this in some of my classes the other day. It would not be any fun if the battle was too easy. If you guys have ever played a video game and you're fighting the final boss and he's hitting at you and you're hitting at him and both of y'all's lives are going down and down and down and down and down, and you have just like half a heart left or just a little bit of HP, and you get in that final stroke and you finally beat him and oh my gosh, I just barely won. It wouldn't be any fun at all if you didn't take a hit and you took one strike at the bad guy and he just bloop, I win. It's too easy. Not any fun. And so this whole idea of a struggle, if the task is so big and you only win by the skin of your teeth, that makes for a really, really epic story. And what do we get out of it? Finally, we get treasure, or the reward. And this is going to be plot point 9, treasure. Now, it's not always going to be a mountain full of dragon gold. Like, sometimes it literally is. If you're reading The Hobbit, he literally gets a mountain full of dragon gold. That's what happens. But sometimes it's an internal feeling. Sometimes it can be the forgiveness of a family member. Sometimes it can be the amazing feeling of winning, like getting the buzzer beater shot in a basketball game. Sometimes it can be you get your pride back because you beat your uncle because he killed your father, like happens in Lion King. But regardless, the hero receives a precious treasure. Again, it doesn't have to be worth money, but sometimes it's a weapon, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's information, sometimes, like in the Hunger Games, it's simply their lives. Like they get to live. Sometimes, if you're looking at fairy tales, it's a kiss. Sometimes it is fame, fortune. Sometimes the only reward is that you completed the task. I don't know if you guys can hear that through my headphones, but there's some beautiful thunder happening outside right now. Sometimes our only reward is the completed task. And that leads us into our fourth and final quadrant. And this one is part 4, the road back. Y'all, I'm an English teacher. I promise you, I can spell. Because we can't just win and bloop, bloop, we're done. No, there's more to it than that. We have to actually go back home and show the rest of the world that we have changed. So, we're going to be at part 10 here. This is the road back. And this, in our normal plot diagram, the one that looks like this, that we talked about the other day, this is the falling action. This is the downward slide, the race to the end, the piece that I said has to exist, but it can go very, very quickly. So this is going to be part 10, the road back. And this is a summary of events of the trip home. This reminds me of The Hobbit, where you spend most of the book getting from the Shire, which is where the Hobbit starts out, all the way to the Lonely Mountain where he fights the dragon. And then the trip home is literally like half a sentence. The hero begins to understand how much they have changed. This might be the point where they learn the lesson that they were meant to learn. This, Englishy type people, this is where English teachers usually want you to find the theme of the story, because your character learns a lesson. Now, they may not have learned it yet. We've still got 2 sections to go. So there's a couple of places in here where they could learn the lesson. But in part 4, this whole quarter, this is where you're going to start to look for your confirmation of the theme. So we need to make sure that the normal world, the world we came from, is okay. And it might not be. It doesn't have to be okay. But in most stories that follow this structure, the normal world hasn't been changed. It's our character that has been changed. This next section, part 11, is called the atonement. And atonement is a big word for apology. Because when our character left the normal world, it is very possible they broke a few things on the way out. They might have had a fight. They might have snuck away. They might have run away. And this is the point when they return where, they always say it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. But this is the point where you have to say, "Oh, I'm sorry." The hero might have to apologize for leaving. So there might be a conversation they need to have. There might be somebody they need to go talk to apologize. But this is also the point where they accept that they have changed. This is the part where they are most likely to learn their lesson. So I would put a little star, and I would put find theme here. Because remember, a theme is a lesson that the character must learn. Whether or not you learn it is up to you, and whether or not the lesson was a good lesson to learn. But the character must learn a lesson. And this is the point where that lesson is learned. And finally, at the very end, we have the reward. Now, sometimes this is literally a party in which they are given a crown or a kingdom or a reward of some kind. Sometimes this is just a hug and a welcome back. Sometimes this is you get to be the new king of the lions and you're the head of Pride Rock now. This might be, the whole school year is over, you succeeded in beating Voldemort, and now it kind of stinks, but you have to go back to the Dursleys. Regardless, we go back to the normal world. But now we are changed. There is a line that almost every character in Into the Woods says. And there's even a whole song about it in the middle of the show that's called I Know Things Now. I know things now that I didn't know before. And sometimes they're good things, and sometimes they're not. They take on a new role in the normal world, and everything goes back to normal, or a new normal. Now, this allows you to start a new story. Because now, even if it is a new normal, you can start right back again with the ordinary world and another call to adventure. And so, with all of our notes on the hero's journey, take a moment and get these down. I know it was a lot of writing. If you didn't get it all done, you have this video to come back to. But I hope this journey was nice for you, and I will see you guys tomorrow.